This is Andy Perot for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm joined by WBC President Mauricio Sulaiman. It's fight day, nearly fight night. Wilder-Ortiz too, but firstly, Mauricio, how are you?
I'm very well, very thankful, I'm happy, and very excited for this great fight.
It's good to hear that you're in such a good mood. Obviously, like I mentioned, we're here, fight night's just around the corner now. What are your thoughts on the rematch between Deontay Wilder and Wilder-Ortiz?
Well, I was fortunate to be in the first fight in New York. It was one of the greatest heavyweight fights in recent years. It was dramatic. Ortiz had Wilder really hurt, and Wilder had to dig big down in his heart and knock them out in the 10th round. Ever since that fight finished, there was expectation for a rematch because it was a very high-level, high-entertaining fight. So now it's fight day, and they both want desperately to hear the bell ring and just go out and try to knock each other out.
What have you made of Lewis's transformation with regards to his fitness, the extra fitness that he's brought into his camp? He's brought in a strength and conditioning coach, Larry Whyte. He mentioned in the first fight he felt that he gassed out towards those middle rounds. Do you feel that could be a telling factor tonight?
Well, condition is, of course, a factor. When you're not in your best condition for a fight, as Mike Tyson said, you can become very, very scared. It's the worst thing that can happen to a fighter, to know that he's in a fight and he's gassed out, that he's got not much left. Wilder-Ortiz looks great, looks in great shape, does Wilder as well. So it's going to be a very interesting, high-power, high-intensity fight.
How much pressure is there on Deontay, knowing everybody spoke about it, the Tyson Fury rematch, everybody's waiting for that one? How much pressure is there on Deontay to be successful tonight?
Well, there's always pressure. He's the world champion. He's got what so many other fighters want. He's got the green belt. He's got the dream of the many of the world. And he's an example because he's fighting the best opposition out there possible. And he's got great plans. He's got a great future, but Ortiz is on the way.
Now, obviously, provided Deontay is successful tonight, I mentioned that Tyson Fury rematch. To your knowledge, February 22nd, is that still going to go ahead unless Deontay was to be successful but to suffer an injury or something, for example?
Yeah, that's the issue. Anything can happen. So they have something planned, but plans have to be adjusted to reality. So whatever happens tonight is going to determine what's the next steps in the division for the WBC champion.
Do you know if there's been anything provisionally signed to agree Wilder Fury 2?
I am not sure. I have been confirmed that there's an agreement, that that's the step, that's what they requested at the WBC convention, and if that fight goes on, it will be the mandatory for the division.
That's what I was about to ask you. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, very recently, you made Tyson Fury the mandatory. Despite the fact he was already lined up to face Deontay in the rematch, why did you decide to do so?
The WBC mandated a rematch when Fury and Wilder drew. And this is just a confirmation of a mandate because Dillian Whyte, who won the WBC interim championship and the mandatory status, has a proceeding, a legal proceeding with in his country, in the UK, which cannot be ignored. So the WBC has ruled that Dillian Whyte's status as interim champion and mandatory contender is on hold until that proceeding is finalized.
What do you know about the Dillian Whyte situation? Because a lot of people in the public continue to ask questions. Nobody's quite sure as to what's going on. It's obviously been kept very close to the Dillian Whyte camp.
It is highly legal. It's a proceeding with UCAD, and that's a government entity, so everything is confidential and very legal. We know as much as others know. We're doing our own process under the protocol of the clean boxing program, and we're waiting to see what are the next steps in the coming months. But that's what was ruled, and if Dillian Whyte is confirmed, is freed from that issue, then his rights will be upheld and he will be online for February 2021 as mandatory challenger.
So that's something I was about to ask you. I know Dillian's got this legal case going on at the moment, but Eddie Hearn's come out and said he may well return on the Ruiz-Joshua card in 2 weeks' time. If that was to be the case, would it not have been possible for him to still have fought Deontay for the original May date, which was being touted previously? Obviously, this is prior to Wilder Fury 2 being announced to February, of course.
Yeah, he's not suspended in any jurisdiction. He's got an issue that has to be dealt with. So, being a formal matter that is being addressed, we cannot overrule that. So, his status is suspended because we're not certain. Something could happen anytime regarding that adverse finding of anabolic steroid that he was found. We give the benefit of the doubt. We are giving him the whole process. We're trying to make sure that he is not guilty and just continue with his career, but it's not in our hands.
Obviously as well, just to move away from Dillian, I touched on Ruiz-Joshua too. What are your thoughts on that bout out in Saudi Arabia? Much highly anticipated rematch once again?
Well, it's a great expectation. The first fight was a huge event, a great upset, a unpredictable result, and the force, who is Joshua, who was undefeated, who was the champion of different belts, and who was highly regarded, faced a hungry, short, chubby Ruiz, who shook the world and made so many people in all aspects in life understand that if you have passion, if you have determination, if you have a dream, you can comply with it and you can make it happen. So Ruiz became an inspiration, Joshua a martyr. So it's time to see what happens in the ring in the rematch.
The WBO and the IBF both have mandatories in Alexander Usyk and Kubrat Pulev. Both of those bodies have said they want to try and enforce their mandatories after the Ruiz-Joshua rematch. The reason I'm saying all this is because everybody wants to see an undisputed fight at some time. It would be nice if it was to happen as soon as both rematches are done and dusted. Do you think, what type of timeline would you put on a potential undisputed fight?
Well, there are times that you need to understand that the sport and the industry is bigger. And there are times where we all have to work together for the betterment of the sport. I think that a unification of the two winners would be tremendous for the sport, would be a great event for the whole world. But I cannot comment on any other's organization's situation because that's their own prerogative and it's their decision. We are open, we have been open, and Wilder had been calling out and willing to fight Joshua for the last 2 years. Hopefully it will happen. I'm hopeful that it will happen.
How big, in your opinion, is an undisputed heavyweight title fight? Is it the biggest fight in boxing if it was to happen?
Absolutely, yes. The heavyweight is the mother of divisions, is the king of the divisions. Historically, the heavyweight champion of the world is the strongest man in the planet. From the early years of Jack Dempsey, Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Foreman, Frazier, Mike Tyson. Those were the great, great times up to Lennox Lewis and the domination of the Klitschkos. Now there's the great interest worldwide back into the division. So a fight between the two champions would be formidable.
Is this current era of heavyweight boxers, in your opinion, as good as some of those names like the Lennox Lewises, the Tysons, the Holyfields, etc.? When all those guys were about and in their prime, is this heavyweight division as maybe is it as good as those, or is it as good as it can be at this moment in time?
Well, it certainly is great. I mean, it's hard to compare eras because each era has its own elements. The Mike Tyson era was one, the Lennox Lewis era was the other. This time we have a very large heavyweights, very strong heavyweights from all over the world. So it makes it very interesting, and I see a lot of talent. So I can certainly see that the heavyweight division is back and it's in a great position. And hopefully we will all work together to make this and give the fans the fights that they all want to see.
Final question I wanted to ask you about the heavyweight division. Jarrell Miller, who had 3 different performance-enhancing drugs found in his system and after failing a test, he's supposed to be close to signing with Top Rank. It's obviously only 5 or 6 months after he had to pull out of the Anthony Joshua rematch because of those findings. Do you think that's enough time? Do you think that's a fair enough punishment that after only 5 or 6 months he may well be about to sign with Top Rank, looking to get back into the ring?
I don't know. Jarrell Miller did not sign up to the WBC clean boxing program, not once but twice. And then he had the adverse finding. I believe that we all deserve opportunities and chances to prove, but on that specific case, I cannot say. He has not been in the WBC rankings for quite a long time because of this matter. So it is not up to the WBC to decide. He is not eligible to the WBC at this moment.
After those findings, and provided he was to go sign with Top Rank and he was to get back into the ring, would you be willing to enroll him into the WBC clean boxing program?
I don't know. I don't like to speculate. He did reject to enroll twice. He was ranked. We gave him the 3-month period to enroll, and he did not, so he was taken out. He was ranked again, as we were led to believe that he was going to enroll. He did not enroll again, so he was taken out. So it's a hard position. If he petitions, he can enroll. Of course he can enroll. Anyone can enroll. You can enroll.
I might well have to.
So it's I don't like to speculate. We'll see.
There's a lot, obviously, I know I'm asking you about it now, there's a lot of talk about performance-enhancing drugs, etc., around the sport at the minute. What are your thoughts on the entire situation? What can be done to ensure that it is just stamped out of boxing? You know, when I interview some people, they say if people are going to be found to have performance-enhancing drugs in the systems, then it may as well just be made legal and everybody should be able to do it. You know, what can we do to just effectively stamp it out or make it an even playing field?
Well, that's a problem. But that's not a boxing problem. It's humanity. Doping is a reality. I believe that doping is a small problem, but a huge problem at the same time. Many fighters are very clean. Most of them want to enroll and want to be tested and want to prove that they're clean. To get an advantage with performance-enhancing drugs in boxing is criminal because you are not playing. You are not scoring goals. You are not scoring baskets. You are punching an opponent. So it is a highly sensitive matter. We have spent a tremendous amount of resources, time and effort, and we continue to try to get the best out of the clean boxing program. We believe that education and awareness to trainers and boxers is very important, and we will continue to do our best to get as many tests as possible, to get as many fighters to be ambassadors of the clean boxing, and to try to keep the sport as clean as possible.
Obviously, over recent years, we've been unfortunate in seeing a fair few boxers pass away from their injuries suffered in the ring. Do you think it may take for somebody to eventually pass away from their boxing injuries and then their opponent to have been found to have had a performance-enhancing drug in their system for everybody to kind of come together to find a solution for it?
I don't think that these accidents in the ring could be linked to PEDs. It would be highly unfair. What I think is that we have to go back to the drawing board and continue to find procedures and rules to make boxing safer. We believe that weight management is a very complicated issue. It's a huge problem. We believe that what happens in the gymnasiums and the private lives of fighters is a very important topic. There are no reports on what happens in the gym. So we mandated that a knockout in the ring, in the gym, has to be reported to the local boxing commission when that happens. It's going to be a process. It's going to take time. We are making accountable the managers, the trainers, even the witnesses who are there in the gym. Something happens. So it's a matter that we all pull together and understand that boxing could be dangerous. It is much less dangerous than it was before. The risk is much lower. But when you have weight problems, when you have PEDs, when you have accidents that are not reported, and when you have mismatches, that's a problem. When you have a fighter who is suspended and fights, when you have a fighter who should not be in the ring and fights, that's when you bring the risk much higher.
Just to move on from performance-enhancing drugs and away from obviously the heavyweights, down to lightweight is something I know you've been asked about numerous times this week. Vasyl Lomachenko recently came out and said that he and his team never applied or got in contact with the WBC about becoming a franchise champion, something you'd previously said that his team or Lomachenko himself had done. What was your thoughts on his comments?
I believe it was a translation problem, lost in translation, internal communication issue between him and his management and the promoter, because they did request to be appointed franchise in the lightweight division. And I've been in communication with his manager, and he is going to speak with him when face to face to see what's the matter. I did not see the interview. I just heard about what has happened, but it was requested and it was voted in favor unanimously by the WBC. So anything else, I do not know.
One thing which other promoters, in particular Eddie Hearn, has said, because Devin Haney's been recently elevated to the WBC world title, in Eddie's opinion, for Lomachenko to become undisputed champion, he'd not only obviously have to face the Comey Lopez winner, but he'd have to face Devin Haney, who holds a regular, normal WBC world title. Can Vasyl Lomachenko become undisputed champion with a franchise title?
Absolutely. He's a champion of the division. There's a lot of concern of the matter of the undisputed champion. We choose to have a regulation in which we can support the big fights to happen. We choose that instead of the concern of someone being undisputed. I don't know if I'm making sense. With the franchise accolade, you can go out and fight in different weight categories, against different champions. You can fight the big fights that are out there. And there are very few fighters who move the industry. One of them is Canelo, the other one is Lomachenko. They are highly regarded, pound for pound, the best in the world, fight in different weight categories, and we are just putting we are unlocking a potential matter that could make that fight, the big fight, not happen. Just like you said in the heavyweights. If the mandatories are enforced, then you will not have the undisputed. You're going to lose some of those titles. So we choose the possibility of making the big fights and making the industry move forward, move upwards, instead of a potential concern of someone. Nobody could be concerned if Lomachenko beats the other title holder. Who is going to say he's not the undisputed champion? I mean, that is secondary. As I say, I'll take that road, and I think it's more important for the industry to see the big fight other than to say, oh, he's undisputed.
One thing that I've just picked up on that you said there, with the franchise title, I take it if Vasyl Lomachenko wanted to move up or move down, or if Canelo wanted to move up or move down, they will still hold that WBC title, and they'd only need to fight for the other three versions of a world title to become undisputed in the other weight categories that they're not currently boxing in?
Yeah, I mean, these fighters themselves are regarded as undisputed champions. I mean, they're the undisputed champions in their era. Yeah. So that, as I said, I don't hold it as a concern that one fighter has all the belts and then he's the undisputed. These two fighters have proven to be the best at their time. So that's just a benefit for the industry. So they can go out and fight light heavyweight. That was a great fight against Kovalev. And can go down super middle or middleweight. Same Lomachenko, he can go up, he can go down and see the great fights. There are very good fights out there for Lomachenko that he can do in super feather, in lightweight, and super lightweight.
So let's just say in like Canelo's case, if he decided to stay at light heavyweight, for him to become undisputed, would he only have to fight Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, who hold the WBA, and Artur Beterbiev is the IBF and WBC title holder, but you'd only have to win the IBF title off of Beterbiev to become undisputed, I take it?
Yeah, but you have several WBA champions, so who is undisputed? You have the Ring magazine, that's a recognized title, so who is undisputed?
Just picking up on that then, obviously you just mentioned the WBA have numerous titles, seeing the introduction of a franchise title. Why is it that we're seeing so many different titles introduced into boxing? Because it's becoming very complicated for everybody to keep on top of, and I know it's a question that you've been asked previously. Why is it that we're seeing such an influx of titles? Because a lot of fans are kind of looking at it thinking the governing bodies are bringing the titles in because of the sanctioning fees that come with it.
I don't know why other organizations, I cannot respond for them. The WBC has a world champion. The WBC has the Silver Championship, which is like a second division. Like in football, you have the Premier League and then you have other divisions. And we have a few belts that are commemorative trophies. So I see the confusion. Of course there's confusion. And it disrupts the administration of the sport. And that's why there are not high caliber challengers all around. There are so many ways to go out and not be a challenger for the WBC because you go to other organizations. But we're just trying to do the best for the sport. Just to clarify, any money that is made from the franchise champion is going to the clean boxing program, is going to the Safe Boxing Task Force, which is medical research, and is going to the WBC Cares, which is the social responsibility program. So that money has nothing to do with the administration of the WBC.
Okay, just to move slightly on from that, but who else is being considered for a franchise title?
No one at this moment.
What would someone have to do to become recognised? Would there have to be somebody like a Canelo, who's a numerous weight world champion, unbelievable record, or Vasyl Lomachenko, who's a brilliant amateur record and 14-1 free weight world champion, for example? Would they have to have that type of standing in the boxing world to be able to be recognised as a potential franchise champion?
Yes, you have to be a fighter of an era, a proven force of the sport, a multiple division champion or a very solid champion in your division. So it's elements that define itself in a way.
Sorry about that, Mauricio. Very busy man, very popular man, I can see. There was a few rumours as well that Deontay Wilder turned down the chance to become the franchise champion. Do you know anything about that?
No, I saw some interviews. I don't think he understands or he has been explained what it is, and he gave just an opinion. And I don't know if it has been made clear, the boxer has to request it. We don't go out and try to make it. But Wilder is a great champion. He's making the 10th title defense. He's got fights lined up, so he's doing his job as a world champion.
And a couple more things I just wanted to get your thoughts on before I do let you go and enjoy the rest of your day ahead of fight night. Obviously recently there was minute traces of Clenbuterol found in the systems of Julio Cesar Martinez and Ray Vargas for Clenbuterol. Since then, the WBC increased the threshold of the allowance that's allowed into the system within a matter of a couple of days of those findings. What was the decision and the thinking behind that?
Thank you for the opportunity. This has to be clarified. The body who is in charge of anti-doping is WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency. Okay? They make the rules. They determine which substances are considered illegal, and they make the rules on the threshold There are some substances that have no threshold, just the minimum finding, it's a adverse finding. Clenbuterol is a substance that is a health problem in Mexico and China and a few other countries. Why? Because cattle are fed clenbuterol, and you can get contaminated by eating beef or eggs in Mexico. There are so many examples that we have done in sports. There was a 2011 World Cup youth in Mexico. Out of 200 tests, 111 players were found positive from all over the world. They were in Mexico. And WADA has many cases with the Olympic competition, with baseball, with soccer, football. And in boxing, we had a few cases. Francisco Vargas, Luis Neri, Canelo Alvarez. So WADA, on June of this year, released a threshold for clenbuterol. So they set the standards and the rules for that substance, giving a threshold. Anything under that line is not to be considered a doping violation. Over that line, it would be to be investigated. So in October, there were 2 tests that came back with a minimum clenbuterol findings for Martinez and for Vargas. So, according to WADA, who sets the rules, those are non-findings or non-violations. We, with transparency, we released that they were found with clenbuterol under the threshold, so it's a non-violation. Canelo Alvarez had clenbuterol problem 2 years ago. If WADA had this threshold 2 years ago, Canelo would not have been found guilty, which has, of course, killed his reputation with something that now the WADA has understood that it's not a violation. I don't know if that's clear.
Just quickly stop and starting. There's my battery. Sorry, my timer was about to run out. Just talk about clenbuterol. What else could we consider seeing, or what else do you think may be considered to having that threshold increased for other items away from clenbuterol? What's your knowledge to what may have been discussed by either the WBC clean boxing program or WADA?
Other substances? Yeah. Oh, meldonium. Meldonium is a substance in Russia, in the Russian countries. And Povetkin had a meldonium violation when he was going to fight Wilder. And WADA has changed the threshold of meldonium as well. So he would have been not guilty also. But at that time, he was found guilty because of the threshold. So it's a complicated world. Doping is a complicated world. A very few who cheat make the whole rest of the world in sports very concerned and with many problems.
Boxing is becoming a very complicated sport, Mauricio. I'm sure you'll agree.
Oh, it has always been very complicated.
Just to move away from that then, and before I let you go, what are you up to now? What have you got in the pipeline when tonight's over? What will you be doing?
I'm gonna go have a steak. Then I'm going home, have a few meetings. Then I'm going to Rome. We have a meeting with the Pope. We have a program of a boxing program with the Pope's Foundation, which is sensational. It's boxing with values. So we will go all over the world making boxing programs to teach values to the trainers, to the fighters. We have also Fight for Peace events in which fighters do some protocol. They plant the olive tree and they give a message of peace. The first Fight for Peace was Canelo, a Catholic, against Amir Khan, a Muslim. It was a tremendous success. We had a few in Italy. Amir Khan, if he fights Gorat, it will be Pakistan, India. So we will do something very nice for peace as well. So we have a very nice program, and just to be with the Pope and to know that the Pope looks and blesses boxing it's a highly satisfaction for us.
And finally, something which I know you've received a lot of praise for, the adaptive boxing program, especially in England, is taken off very well. It's had a lot of support. How well is it going? What are your thoughts on it as time is progressing?
Oh, it's going very well. We made a nice presentation at the convention. We had a woman and a man in wheelchair making a demonstration. That fighter is here right now. He's going to be going to the fight as our guest. And we're introducing it to America, United States, Mexico, Canada. There's a program in France. And we're very, very enthused by this because someone who loses the ability to continue their activity in life, whether it's in combat or an accident, something happens and you cannot walk anymore, you're confined to a wheelchair, there's a tremendous depression that goes with it. After being so active, then you go to a wheelchair. So this has been a great road for those who have found in boxing a new way of being active.
In fact, one final word before I did want to let you go. A fellow Mexican tonight, Leo Santa Cruz, attempts to become a 4-weight world champion. What are your thoughts on Leo's career to date?
Leo is an exemplary fighter, inside and outside the ring, a tremendous story, a great, beautiful boxing family, a very nice kid and a warrior. So he's a great asset to the sport.
He is indeed. And Mauricio, I know I've kept you for long enough and I've seen your phone, constantly getting phone calls as we've been doing this interview. So I'll let you go and do some proper work now away from myself. I appreciate you coming down to see me on Fight Day as well. So thank you for speaking to myself and Boxing Social. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your visit with the Pope.
Thank you so much, and Boxing Social, it's the way to follow boxing.